soul. It may feel like you are trudging through a dark forest with no clear path, no light, no map, no destination. All you have is fear, confusion, the feeling of being lost and unsure if you will ever find your way out of the woods. You could march for hours or years in uncertain directions, unable to solve whatever problem brought you there. You fumble through the branches as you hear wild animals howling, and you despair of ever finding your way out of the desolation and into the light. But then you reach a crossroads, and several paths appear before you. At first, all you feel is more confusion, and maybe anger that those roads aren't clearly marked. But then you understand that this is your journey, and it can take you down any of those roads, and now you have to make a choice. Most of the time, you will not see a benevolent crone goddess with a cauldron of sacred water asking you what you want. Not literally. But that figure is very, very old. In ancient Greece, she was known as the goddess Hecate of the crossroads, who guarded the crossroads with her wolves. In Ireland, she became Ceridwen, with her cauldron of wisdom and inspiration and transformation. In the hero's journey that was described so eloquently by Joseph Campbell, she is sometimes the mentor figure. She's who provides the hero with information or tools so that he can go on the next leg of his journey. She also is sometimes considered to be part of the ordeal of the hero's journey. Opinions differ. She's 1,000 fairy tale witches. In Wiccan initiations, the high priestess takes that role and challenges the initiate and then grants access to secret lore. In The Matrix, she's Morpheus, who presents Neo with 2 pills and asks him whether he wants to turn back or see how deep the rabbit hole goes. So it's easy to see that figure as a myth. It's also tempting to see her as a solution, the wise divine figure, the grandmother, the God figure, the goddess figure who offers you clarity and a reward for making it this far. No, neither of those is true. Crossroads are sacred points of transformation. There are 4 paths, usually, available to you, and one of those is to try to go back the way you came, which doesn't usually work. You didn't come this far all the way through the dark because the place you came from was a comfortable option. Whatever you are fleeing from, or have outgrown, or need to leave behind, you have reached a place where for the first time you can see that you are done with that path and there are multiple ways out. And you have to decide which one to take, which is why that crone goddess figure asks you what you want. And this is where the real work begins. In that dark night at the crossroads with a metaphorical grandmother goddess staring you down, you have to face your real desires. Why have you come this far? Who do you want to be? What do you really want? Our world gives us 1,000 things to want. Money, power, beauty, a big house, alcohol, drugs, fame, a glitzy career, a big promotion, attractive partners of our preferred gender, admiration and approval and respect, or an easy life with no responsibilities. But in the dark, we have to ask, are any of those what we really want? Are they what we ever wanted? What is our truest will? Where is our deepest center? Who are we ready to become? And our task is to stand at that crossroads in the dark until we know, and then choose a path and resume our journey. The crone goddess is an archetype, but she also works through people. She could be a therapist or a member of the clergy, a recovery group sponsor, a social worker. She is anyone who can be present with someone in the throes of a transformation without judging or shaming or ridiculing or preaching or trying to force a particular outcome. I believe this is one of the most sacred things that anybody can do. But that person doesn't do the work for you. She's not the answer, and she doesn't give you one. She's there to witness your journey and open the road you choose. It is your dark night of your own soul, and you choose your path. First, you walk for what seems like forever. Then you stop, and you listen to your truest self. And then you choose your road, and you start walking again.
Kim Lamb will now share their message, entitled Sacred Grief. We'll just wait another little second. Hi, Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim, she, her pronouns. Let's take this off. There are two things in life that will change you forever: love and grief. We have all experienced grief. It is part of being human. Then why do we as a society try so hard to avoid it? Why do we put time limits on others' grief and even our own? Why are we afraid to talk about grief? Afraid to ask someone, how's your grief journey going? Fear of saying something wrong to someone who's grieving and fear of burdening people with our grief keeps us from talking about it. Too many times we build a cloud of toxic positivity, not realizing that grief may be hidden, but it will not go away. Ignoring our grief robs us of the opportunity to learn about ourselves. It keeps us from growing out of our comfort zones. We fail to build resiliency and seeing things in a new way. Emotional grief can turn into physical grief and alter behaviors, which will cost us our jobs, our family, our friends. There are as many tools for grief as there are people, and our grief journeys are as diverse as we are. But the bottom line is we're going to feel the pain sooner or later. Author Marabee Starr points out that broken hearts grow in compassion. I think most of us will agree that working through grief changes us. We become more vulnerable, more human. We develop new empathy. Marabee believes that sharing grief brings sacred into our lives. While society suggests that we withdraw and deny our grief, she urges that we come together and do the sacred work of grieving. She shares two elements or ways of expressing grief that are very natural and human reactions. As I share them, listen to the ones you can relate to. Keep in mind that just as with Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, Marabee's are not linear, and we can bounce around revisiting others. We become shattered. We are hurled into space. We yield to the fact that invisible things are happening. We can't help but turn inwards. Nothing makes sense anymore. We become perpetually pissed off, and that's a quote. We start setting new boundaries, which I might add could be good ones, but they could also be bad ones, as in never loving again. We feel we have nothing to lose. We realize we cannot solve the problem of loss. We say yes to sorrow. We step into the dark night of the soul. We claim our place in the web of humanness. And last, we co-create a new reality. I came to this church at the end of February. You all had lost a few members, and I could tell they meant a lot to you. You were also experiencing anticipatory grief, knowing that Reverend Ben was leaving soon. I watched as you talked about the loss of your friends. I watched as you pulled together memorial services. I listened to you as you talked about the sorrow of Ben leaving and the unknown of who would take his place. You were doing the sacred work of dealing with collective grief. In the last 2 weeks, many of us have talked about possible losses after the election. We share our fears as we prepare ourselves mentally for possible bad political news and more collective grief. We are doing the sacred work of grieving together. Individually and as a community, we grieve the climate damages caused to the earth. We are saddened to think about the conditions that will be left for our children and grandchildren. We grieve the fact that there are no easy solutions and there's a lack of people who care enough to make a change. We are doing the sacred work of grieving together. During this time of the year, when the veil is the thinnest between the living and the dead, it is natural for us to think about our lost loved ones, our lost relationships, the effects aging has on our physical and mental abilities, our lost dreams of how we thought things would be. We need to realize that these things that seem personal are in fact collective grief because we have all shared that experience. By talking about our grief, we open up conversations to allow others to talk about theirs. When we make grief as normal as a conversation as talking about our physical ailments, we are doing the sacred work of grieving together. David Kessler says, "Each person's grief is as unique as their fingerprint, but what everyone has in common is that no matter how they grieve, they share a need for their grief to be witnessed. That doesn't mean someone to try to lessen it or refrain it for them. The need is for someone to be fully present to the magnitude of their loss without trying to point to the silver lining." Let's talk about grief. Let's do the sacred work of grieving together.
Matt Deploy now has our final message, including meditation entitled Sitting with Your Shadow.
Hello, everyone. It's really lovely to be with you all here today. I want to start off by saying how much I love these Sunday services. I look forward to them all week long because I cherish this time together so tremendously. This community has given and taught me so much. This place is my spiritual home where I find peace, connection, and hope. Things I think we all feel more in need of during these tumultuous times. I want to name the heightened feelings of anxiety and trepidation we're collectively feeling with impending changes and so many challenges we're all facing. And while it will be imperative for us to deeply tend to our communities and learn to trust and lean on each other more to get through whatever tough times are to come, it is just as important to cultivate a sense of trust and connection within ourselves. Oftentimes, we get so caught up with everything going on externally that we forget or simply never find a time to connect to ourselves and take a look at what is going on internally. When we get disconnected from ourselves, we feel disempowered and helpless, fearful of acting without external guidance. In times of uncertainty, when we feel lost in the unknown and all we can see is everything outside of ourselves that is out of our control, it is so understandable that we believe ourselves to be stuck and incapable. That is why it is so important to remember that we can always come back to ourselves no matter what happens. I have found that nurturing the relationship between the mind, body, spirit, and the self is paramount to finding personal empowerment, as the only thing we can truly control is ourselves and the reactions we have to what happens around us. The gift of this time of year, what we pagans call the dark of the year, is that of introspection. We need time alone, away from noise and distractions, to just sit with our feelings so we can actually feel and process them. And this time of darkness and stillness gives us that opportunity. Being allowed this space to just sit with ourselves gives us the chance to understand what our feelings are trying to tell us. Feelings serve a purpose. They are responses to what the body is experiencing. And while feelings are not the facts of the situation, they are valid and they hold information for us. They tell us how we're perceiving the situation and how that perception fits in with our understanding of the world. Being intentional and introspective with ourselves is a powerful way of learning about, building, and nurturing our relationship with ourselves. Now, I know the really difficult part of focusing so much on our emotions is it means having to make space for and acknowledge the really hard, scary emotions that are there too. The practice of shadow work, the idea of intentionally interacting with all aspects of oneself that one's rejected, dismissed, or dissociated from, can be a deeply empowering act of self-love and self-honoring. I've entitled my reading as Sitting with Your Shadow, and what I mean by that is giving yourself the space and time to sit with and feel all of the hard, inconvenient feelings you might wish weren't there. Kim already did a beautiful job exploring the ways in which connecting to our grief is a sacred act. Now I am asking all of us to make space for and connect with the other big feelings that we often want to hide from or push away. The rage, the fear, the guilt, the shame, everything you've ever been told to quiet down, ignore, or control. Of course, we want our actions to be in alignment with our values and for us to behave in ways we feel proud of. We want to act out of love and not fear. This practice of sitting with your shadow, acknowledging everything within you that you may deny, ignore, or actively dislike about yourself, is a powerful act of radical honesty with yourself. Sometimes just naming the feelings and saying, yes, you are real, you are valid, you exist within me, is enough to bring some internal peace. I am now going to lead us through a short meditative practice I learned from a wonderful therapist I used to go to. She taught me to imagine my inner world as a room with endless space, and my emotions as guests who come knocking at the entrance of the room. As they knock, I invite them in and let them take up as much space as they want, as I can always expand my inner world and make it as infinite as I am, just as you all can make it as infinite as you are. So now I invite you to close your eyes if that feels comfortable, and for a moment, just notice the darkness you find behind your eyelids. Focus on this quiet inner darkness and just take a breath here. Now, imagine you are in a room. This room can look like anything. It can have as many or as few details as you want. This room is your inner world and can be anything. The only thing it needs to have is a door. This door is the point through which your emotions can enter your inner world. When you feel a knock at the door, go to answer it and allow whoever is there to enter your room. This emotion might be a regular visitor, someone familiar with the space. It might be a very welcome guest, highly anticipated. It might be a loud, messy house guest who overstays their welcome. It might be the very feeling you've been avoiding and fearing the most. Whoever it is, let them in. They have a message for you. This message might be loud and clear, quiet and subtle, long overdue, confusing, or just hard to accept. Whatever comes up for you, whoever may come knocking, or whatever message is told, refrain from passing judgment. Accept these feelings and the information they give as simply the truth of this moment. When the feeling has said its piece and feels fully felt, you can thank it for what it had to teach you, no matter how hard the lesson, and allow it to leave out the door. Take just one more breath here in this space of inner darkness, and then when you feel ready, open your eyes and return to the sanctuary. Thank you all, and blessed be.